Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert. I'm joined today by Peter Joeckel for another edition of our AX to Dynamics 365 Upgrade Journeys podcast series. And Peter, we have an interesting one today. It gets back to your most recent article related to the series on really I guess I would call it the conundrum of the constraints felt by mid-market AX customers and their planning for what D365 for finance and operations would look like in their organizations.
Hey, Jason, good to be on with you again. Thanks for setting this all up. Yeah, I'm really excited today to hear what I'm seeing is kind of in that mid-market enterprise space is that the amount of expense to take an AX implementation and move it to the cloud. Not just from a licensing standpoint or from that upgrade standpoint, but, all the moving parts on this. I think those companies that are sitting in the middle are, they're sitting in a tough spot, as opposed to the smaller companies that don't have, very intensive requirements, and the bigger companies that have almost unlimited costs. And I think what we're going to hear today is a fascinating story about somebody that's, sitting in that mid-market enterprise space, with that AX implementation, and how they are going about, reviewing that D365 move and, kind of decision process they've gone through. So I'm excited today. I think it's going to be a great podcast today.
Yeah, a lot to cover. We're going to be looking at things like affordability, cost analysis, various modules, how to handle customizations. Maybe even touch on integration or some of the sort of third-party considerations that hook into AX versus hooking into, say, a cloud solution. So plenty to get into, and we're going to jump into it. I should also mention we're not revealing the company that our other guest works for today. So we're sort of, if you're listening as we move on, we're sort of dancing around that just because they didn't want to be identified. But it's I guess it's safe to say. Well, how would you describe the company in sort of general terms?
What I would consider enterprise level, multi-location, multi-country, manufacturing. A long time, AX implementation, having gone through a lot of the, ERP implementation growth pains and, several iterations of partners and, IT, IT staffs. And so, not unlike what you're going to see in a great number of companies in that mid-market and, from the number of experiences, that they've had with their ERP implementation.
All right, well, let's get into it. We have Irene on as our guest, and we're going to be a little generic in sort of identifying you, Irene. You're an IT applications manager. You work at an enterprise that runs Microsoft Dynamics AX ERP. The company is a manufacturer, and you and your team, I understand, has been through a pretty serious evaluation process recently, trying to figure out your next steps with the AX and the Dynamics business application line.
Absolutely. It's been very eye-opening. For us, we want to do what's right for the company. So initially when we were considering doing an upgrade, we thought, we should go to 365 because, obviously you want to get the biggest bang for your buck. And as we started kind of doing research and talking to vendors, we had done pretty extensive research and vetting out vendors. I think we went through about 10 different vendors trying to get just information, feedback, methodology, anything we could think of that would kind of help us, guide us in the right direction. And the further down the road we got with talking with people, I actually got, I would say, kind of scared away from doing the 365 dive. We've been on, let's just say we started the 2012 implementation of AX back in 2012, 2013, roughly. It was not an easy implementation for this company. We went through several different vendors. it was very difficult for them to get the mindset for change here. So it is up and running. I would say that a lot of the functionality is not being used. Things weren't set up. It was kind of, let's just get it up and running bare bones so that we can make corporate happy. And, over the last couple of years, we've been fixing a lot of things, helping to get functions working again. So part of the plan for us to do an upgrade was not just, we're on a very old version of 2012, probably RTM QM3. That's due to a lot of the modifications that were put in at the time. And for us to make any kind of change, it's going to be a big deal for us.
So from what I'm hearing, it's maybe a conservative company that doesn't want to introduce a lot of radical updates or radical changes all at once, and is moving cautiously.
Yeah, very cautiously, and I think a lot of it has to do with just past history. I don't think they expected the 2012 implementation to be so difficult, yet it was. And it's a combination of things. I think it was a combination of, maybe 2012 was a jump for them as far as, was it out too soon? Did they try to go live on it too soon? Then you do get key people here that are, it's difficult for change. I also think that, the mindset here was, oh, well, this is how we did it on our old system. We have to do it exactly the same way on our new system. So, there were a lot of things that kind of played into it. Went through several different vendors to get through, actually go live. And again, I think that in a way, I think it was kind of pushed through the implementation to make corporate happy that, hey, we spent way more than what we said we would, and we just have to get up and we have to run. So,
hey, Irene, it's Peter. I just wanted to add a little bit of color to this for you. And for full disclosure, we worked a bit with the company on the go live situation. And one of the ironies I find about your company is that if you walk on the shop floor, it is a complex manufacturing production company, and the shop floor is immaculate. The machinery is, state of the art. It's new. Everything is clean, pristine, and so you have this, and to me, a lot of times in a manufacturing company, an indicator of what the shop floor looks like is, to me, an indicator of what the ERP system looks like. And you guys got the, in a lot of ways, you guys experience the short end of the stick with a lot of the bad behavior that you sometimes see in ERP implementations. One with probably having functionality introduced that was overkill, and customizations that were wildly, significant in the daily processing, and that literally broke things, right? So you guys suffered tremendously from those, that initial implementation, and I think you guys have been, suffering from that ever since. And your task is very unenviable because you have all this bad experience, which all the folks that have to rally all this energy all the time to, fix stuff is, it's a tremendous amount of effort and energy on their part. And so you're stuck not only trying to move the ball forward, but you almost have to undo a bunch of stuff to start moving the ball forward. So very, very tough task and unenviable, but I think you've been doing a great job there. So I want to give you some props on that based on, where you are today, based on, the things that were handed to you when you showed up there.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, it's definitely been a learning adventure for us. It keeps us busy. But, as I said, kind of looking at the upgrade itself, 365 was first the direction that I really thought we were going to go into. I love the idea of cloud-based solution with all the bells and whistles built in. theoretically, it's the best long-term solution for any mid-sized company. You're taking a lot of the management of the hardware, of the SQL Server, future upgrades. You're taking it out of the picture, and that's really what draws me to it. Having every functionality working and all these extra things that we've never even thought about at this point. But then as I ventured down this road and I was talking with different people, different vendors and just, colleagues, there's so many 365 unknowns and so many rumors circulating. I can't have my company be a guinea pig, that's for sure. I'm committed to getting to 365 someday, but I'm going to have to see a lot of other people get there first. And, as they venture there, I want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly, all along the way. And I'd like to, for Microsoft side, I don't know if they know that, these are things that scare us, that concern us. I'd like to hear what they have to say. I'd like to hear what their commitment is to making this move even easier for people.
Yeah, I would say you're certainly not the only AX customer who has that concern. And my read right now is that they're just at the very early stages of upgrading many AX customers to the cloud offering. A lot of the focus for the first couple of years has been on new customer acquisition, people coming in without an AX upgrade, and those tools are just starting to mature in terms of bringing over historical data or just customization, right, Peter? Resolving or sort of upgrading customizations to the new model. So there's certainly, I think we're in a 2 to 5 year period here where you will get to see some of that as other companies make the move. So and just to be clear, so you were looking at 365. What did you decide as your next steps?
So as we started doing a lot of the conversations, things that concerned me came up, like integrations, moving our modifications, reporting. We have a lot of SSRS reports written on the outside of AX, and when some of these things have started coming at us, the last thing in the world I wanted to do was to make this difficult for my people, for my community. Considering what they had gone through, which is trying to get AX 2012 up and running. For me, I want to get as much functionality up and running for my people without having to put them through another really difficult implementation. So from that standpoint, we kind of geared back a little bit and we decided that, R3 would be the best thing for us. With R3, it's the same look and feel pretty much that I got now. I'm going to get, more functionality, more features. I'm going to have things that actually work that don't work today. Also from that standpoint, a lot of the work is going to be at the back end. It's going to be more on the IT side. So we're going to move them over. We're going to take a lot of the modifications out and try to use the system as intended. So with that, the users are going to have some process changes in some areas, but for the most part, we're cleaning up a lot of the issues that were causing other pieces not to work within the system. So we decided that that's going to be a big enough chunk for my user community to be able to handle right now. So that would be the first step. And also, some of the things that kind of went into it is we know that we can't go directly from our version up to 365 as far as the data conversion. So we have to make that jump to converting our data R3 first anyway. And then, we decided to go 365, we'd have to then, make this the second jump. But since there was no straight path, then why not? Why not stop at R3 right now? And, get my people more comfortable, get them using more of the features and functions. And then once, we've seen a lot of people go through the 365 upgrade, then I'll make my jump.
Yeah, and one of the things that people do have to realize is that there is not a straight path on all versions of AX. And so literally, one of the first things you have to figure out is what version are you on? And if you're, back from that R3 version, there's no direct upgrade. And if you want to make the jump from there, what you're really looking at is a reimplementation, not a upgrade. And the, as we get further and further down the road with, with some of these upgrades with actual projects, and the more we talk to folks, like Irene, and their thought processes, I'm starting to think that we shouldn't call this an upgrade because, I've been in this business for over 30 years and I've done tons of upgrades and nothing that we end up doing here resembles, a classical upgrade. And to me, what you have here is you've got a tremendous amount of what I would say is pure R&D work that Microsoft has to accomplish that's pushed down to customers and the implementer community, right? Because we're over here fixing stuff and learning things, as we go. So just a tremendous amount of time and effort and expense that Microsoft literally, has pushed down either, intentionally or unintentionally based on the rate that, the speed that they're trying to release this product. So, Irene, I think has made the right choice on this, is go to that good, stable R3. And once you've got that up and running and humming like a Swiss watch, then you're in a much better position anyways. And hopefully on the other end, those, upgrade tools and processes have progressed where those, integrations and, the types of complexities that you have from an enterprise customer, like Irene has to keep up and running, a lot of those things have been fixed.
I heard a lot of items that you kind of listed off there, Irene, of problems, things that you're looking forward to fixing, moving to R3, and certainly I think things that maybe by the same token worry you about trying to get straight into a cloud D365 situation, which again makes sense, and I can certainly understand how you have those concerns. I am interested to get Peter's perspective, though. Were there other things about Irene's perspective or her company's perspective on where they're at with AX that were unique concerns, or were there other concerns that you had in mind hearing what options that they were weighing?
Well, let's take a step back for a second and think about Irene in context and her company in context of other companies like hers. Okay, the vision of AX, right? The vision of AX was a blank sheet of paper where companies could make modifications and adjustments to the software easily, and fit them to their business requirements. And the genius of the way the AX was designed is that those business process modifications, those customizations, those personalizations, all those things were designed in such a fashion that AX was sold on that promise that these things would move up to the next version easily, right? That was the genius. That was the vision. That was, the sales pitch. And for a long time there, that was a reality of what you were getting with AX, right? You got this capability to make all these modifications, whether they were, critical, hardcore business modifications, or they were look and feel things that were kind of easy. You were able to do those things. And the way the AX was designed, the way that structure was set up with all these layers, right? You could move these things up to subsequent upgrades. That's gone, right? If you talk to anybody, that's undergoing this process, it is just not easy to move anything that you've done up to the, this new platform. Now, you couple that with a lot of business modifications that perhaps shouldn't have been done or were done, less than adequately. and you compound that problem, right? And then the fact that how you bring data in from other systems, right, that may not be able to easily coexist in the cloud, and the ever shifting tableau of how you report out of the system, right? There are so many moving parts on almost a daily basis, right? That if I was an IT manager, I would be scared to death.
Irene, I wanted to ask you something that ties into what you mentioned earlier. You said, getting the implementation done, making, sort of corporate happy. Is anyone else at this point happy with the solution you have, or is anyone like has anyone been living with less than happy feelings about the current system?
Yeah, I mean, our user base kind of goes across different spectrums. We've got people that, they're used to coming in. This is what they do every day. They hit a couple of buttons and they do their job and they're happy. But we have other people that want to go far beyond that. When we had implemented one of our newer divisions, they were rather upset that what they got wasn't a system that was completely working, because obviously we're using the same environment and there were things that were broken because of all the modifications that were done on an original implementation. And so they were upset. They were like, hey, we want to be able to, get all this functionality. And I mean, the whole point of having an ERP system is to be able to have that system work for you. And half these functions weren't working because of the modifications that were made. So people were very unhappy with that. Now, in turn, these people are the ones that are helping us to, create the ROI for us to do the upgrade to R3. So I have a lot of people that are very anxious, very happy about moving to a different, version. I still have a few that are, that are going to fight me tooth and nail, but a lot of them really want the system to work for them.
That makes sense. And how married are you to 365 in the future? Is it possible you would look outside of Microsoft and look for another ERP for the longer term future?
I doubt that. Yeah. I don't think we would do that. I think that Microsoft is a great product. I think that when we get to the point of fixing it with R3 and using the features that are out there, I think this company is going to absolutely love it. The only thing, I mean, there's a lot of, like I said, I have a lot of questions about some different things about 365 getting there. But one of the other things that I do have a question about is the affordability of the cloud. Having gone through in a previous life, the Salesforce.com and whole cloud-based solutions that came up, maybe 10, 15 years ago. At first, it was really impressive. It was like, oh my God, you get this great system and it's got, all this, flexibility and all these tools, and oh my God, and they do quarterly updates, and, they're going to keep building on it. And, soon afterwards, when they started getting to be bigger, that kind of stopped. And they still did quarterly updates for fixes, but all of a sudden you found out that if you wanted more functionality and you wanted some other tools, you had to go, out to the App Exchange, and you had to pay more money for everything. So, I mean, I would love to hear what, Microsoft's strategy is on this, because, Salesforce.com actually made themselves unaffordable to a lot of companies, but a lot of people are stuck with them because they got on board, they put a lot into it, and it's hard to take that away once it's in place.
That's a great point. I've actually been thinking about that myself, because I was just at a conference for users in Europe, and one of the things I was reminded of was kind of that theme, because, for example, it looks like the plan is like for workspaces in the future is to go away from the current analytical workspaces and entity store and move to Azure Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 with PowerBI.com as the reporting engine that can then be integrated in, which has benefits, and it's certainly a very modern approach. But I think from what they were saying, you're paying extra now for your data lake, and you're paying extra for your PowerBI.com Pro or Premium seats on a per user basis, and all of a sudden, some of that reporting gets more expensive than it was before. And I don't honestly know how much more. It might be marginal, but yeah, it's a great question going forward as they add technology or add, use of Flow, use of other Azure services. Where do those costs start to where are they folded in versus where do they become extra add-ons, or something that everyone needs to watch for, I suppose. And Peter, let me put things back to you here. So I'm just thinking back to the article that you just wrote for MSDW just this week, sort of looking at sort of three levels of or three maybe profiles of companies thinking about the future for their ERPs. And there's, I'm going to paraphrase here. You can jump in, but there's the smaller companies with fairly straightforward needs and can go with light to zero customization, and they're pretty happy on a modern cloud-based ERP. There's large enterprise, huge IT budgets can absorb a pretty good amount of cost to get themselves to where they need to be, sort of muscle it through and get what they need out of it and not break the bank. And then there's this big mid-range, right? And it sounds like Irene's company is one of many that are in that sort of mid-range where these considerations have to be are very sensitive, right, to the business. Does that fit in with what your thought was in that piece?
Yeah, 100% is, to me, the cloud as it's constituted today, the ideal customer for the cloud is the customer that is new to the cloud, and especially smaller customers that have limited functionality and that don't want to do a lot of customization, right? Because the cloud lends itself very easily to what I call, that gym membership, right? Where you get what you pay for and your credit card gets dinged month after month after month. The best customer for that business scenario is that company that can just run the software as is without any problems. When you think of a enterprise company, enterprise level company that's in that mid-market like Irene, there are an incredible number of moving parts where on a daily basis, there are multiple fire alarms that are going to be set off at Microsoft because of things that need to be reviewed and looked at, right? And so that's a very expensive, very complex thing to settle down. Now, if you're if you're a really big company that has these, close to unlimited IT budgets, you can wrestle with that thing. And like you said, kind of brute force and, be that market leader on that stuff. But if you're in that mid-market space, and I keep thinking back to, the example of one of these customers where we did an initial, very simple, what I call GLAPR, which is GLAPAR financials implementation with very limited, integration work, where we did that implementation 2 years ago, and now we're doing their upgrade, and the initial proposal was twice the cost of the initial implementation. And now it's grown past that as these folks, have identified additional things that they wish to accomplish. That kind of cost structure, and Irene, I'd be interested to hear, what you were seeing not as the range of potential, costs to get your system upgraded from the AX to the D365, and in particular, the range of, potential proposals on that. The cost structure for this pure upgrade process right now, I don't think is something that most companies in the mid-market can absorb. So if you're small, you're fine because you can run that quote unquote QuickBooks level solution. If you have an incredible amount of money, you can drive this kind of leading edge stuff. But if you're in the middle, boy, you're doing a lot of R&D work for Microsoft. on your dime, and very, very expensive and cost prohibitive for most folks.
Irene, can we put that to you? Can you give us any sense of the magnitude of spending you were looking at or planning for in the different options you've been weighing?
So what we initially did was we actually started with a discovery with the vendors. So we've gone through our discovery, and now we have some pricing that did come back. And the project is not just limited to doing an upgrade or to implement R3. There are other pieces of the pie that are kind of in there also. New modules that we wanted to roll out.
New out-of-the-box modules.
Yeah, so things that weren't available in RTM that are available in R3. So, there were a couple of new modules that were coming into play. Also, we were looking at, a little bit of BI and a little bit of archiving, to kind of deal with some, performance issues that we were having. But the upgrade or the implementation itself, because I think for the most part, it's probably going to be an implementation. I don't think we're going to bring a lot of the data over, probably leave a lot of the transactional old stuff behind, and just bring over, more current information. But I mean, we're probably talking about in the ballpark of maybe between $400,000 and $500,000.
Did you get as far as evaluating costs on the D365 side, or did that kind of fall away more quickly?
I think that there were some vendors that came in and talked about, what they foresaw it to be, but no one came back with all right, here's a definite quote, but it was easily into the millions.
Wow. You mentioned BI, and I think earlier you mentioned you have SSRS reports. How well is that working? How well is your approach to reporting working at this point, and do you see it changing?
There are a lot of reports that were written in SSRS outside of AX, only because we have a lot of other systems that we integrate with. So it made sense to have a lot of those reports on the outside. Anything that is truly AX has been built in AX.
Hey, Jason, I have a question for Irene that I ask everybody that's kind of in an IT function that she's in. It's kind of got multiple bits to it, but it's all, for me, kind of the general same question is when you're looking for information on something like the upgrade process, where do you go? Who are where have you found are the most trusted resources for good information? And in your position as a good mid-size enterprise customer, how much are you relying, or how much information are you getting from Microsoft directly, to answer specific questions that you have?
So a couple of different avenues. I like to talk to the AX user group chapter people that I see quarterly, and I have a relationship with some of them that I go back and forth on emails, during the year. I like to get a lot of feedback from them, especially the ones that, there are bigger companies than I am, because I expect, them to make the jump before I do. So I like to hear what they hear, like to hear, where, what direction they're going on. So as part of this, I actually reached out to a bunch of people and asked them what they were doing just to get that, guidance. I'll search the internet. I want to get, I'd like to read articles, and the articles could be, from various different places. It could be information from Microsoft. It could be magazines. It could be, different vendors putting blogs out. So I tend to, do as much research as I can on different topics.
I had I think you and I spoke a little bit about this, the concept of doing this. And just as a shout out, I think your user group may be the best one in the country. And you relayed an interesting tidbit of the last time you were at one of the meetings, and you kind of asked for a show of hands on a question. I'd love you to relate that story. I thought it was fascinating.
So we had one of our customers as part of our group. They're a new customer, and they came in to just talk a little bit about their 365 environment. So they were not a company that converted from 2012 R3. They were brand new, and so they were talking a little bit about that. At the end of their session, there was a question put out to the entire group, and they asked, who's considering an upgrade to 365 at this point? And not one person raised their hand.
And it's not a small group, is it?
No, we're talking, there were probably about 50 people in the room.
All on AX, none were yet considering a move.
Right.
I have to say, I think I'm just going to give my opinion here, but I think in a way, Microsoft's probably relieved about that, because I think they have their hands full with the number of companies on 365 right now. And maybe getting back to the comment I made earlier, I think, that 2 years from now, 4 years from now, I think they'll be really pushing companies on the AX 2012 R3 to think more directly about doing it, but it's not like they're not busy with what's going on right now. And because Peter, you've been on 365 projects. We're talking to another consulting team that's on them, and I mean, it's a process, and from all sides, from the customer side, the partner side, and Microsoft side, I mean, it keeps them very, very busy. The ones who are actively doing it.
Yeah, there's so many amazing pieces that you take for granted in the AX world that are dramatically and radically different when you're approaching this upgrade process now. That it's that's why I've got this entire series rolling, right, about all these different things that we're finding. I'm sorry, Irene, I think I cut you off.
No, that's okay. What I was going to say is that as we were talking with different vendors about our upgrade or implementation, and when we were still kind of teetering on the line of what to do as far as 365 versus R3, we felt that at times, not all vendors, but some of the vendors, we felt almost pressured that no, it has to be 365. And there's incentives. They're great incentives. So that was kind of a little bit. It made us take a step back and kind of like whoa, hold on a second. That was actually uncomfortable.
And Jason, if I can address that, I think I've probably talked to Irene about this. Is if you look at the Microsoft partner ecosystem. You break it down into the big partners, right? The partners that are, what I consider, the hardcore, go-to Microsoft partners, right? They have huge investments. They work hand in hand with Microsoft, and that line, having been in that, ecosystem, all of their business is driven by what's called net new, meaning new deals, right? New deals, either brand new customers that are buying into this or customers that they're converting from AX into this new licensing because of the pressure on the Microsoft side to turn themselves into a cloud business, right? Because that's what Microsoft said. They're going to reposition themselves from making money, releasing a new version of Windows, every several years, to being a cloud company. And it's that cloud revenue, reoccurring revenue, that has them positioned as the most valuable company in the world now at one point. And so that pressure is intense, right? And what that leads to, what that pressure leads to is bad behavior. Because if you follow this logically, where companies used to sell AX and make a lot of money on the licensing, right, on the licensing of those sales, Now there's almost no money in the partner channel for these cloud licenses because the vast majority of that money goes to Microsoft. The stress level now, right, to not only move people up to make Microsoft happy and then get that next lead, right, and be included on that next project is incredibly intense, right? And at the same time, the pressure to sell projects is incredibly, there's an incredible amount of stress there because you're no longer making the money on the software sales. And it's never been easy to sell this software. It's always been expensive, right? And so the amount of stress that this business move from Microsoft of moving into the cloud has put on the partner community is incredible. And Irene, that's exactly what you saw there. Depending on what the partner's business model is, you're going to get two different stories and sometimes three different stories. So it's just a very classical follow the money and the motivation.
Hey, Irene, I had a sort of unrelated question. With all the planning and thinking about this you've done, do you have sort of a timeline mapped out in your head of where you'll be in 2 years, where you'll be in 4 years, maybe beyond?
So I'm hoping to start the implementation to R3 later in the year and not rush it. It's probably going to be a year project at least. So I would say, hopefully be on there by the end of 2020 or maybe the beginning of 2021. I'm going to wait this out for quite a while. I'm not going to come back to do another upgrade probably for another 5 years.
And I'm Peter. I'm blanking on the support the support timeline side of it for AX 2012 R3. Do you know what Microsoft's latest guidance on that is? It's somewhere in the 2020s for extended support.
I don't remember what the exact date is today. I know it's changed significantly as they've rolled out. As they've rolled out the D365 and figured this stuff out. And anybody that's asked me, logically, is that that's going to continue to be pushed out. And at some point, they may even give up and say, oh, what the heck, we gotta, there's no way that we can have, 10,000 implementations out here that are never going to upgrade and just, drop them. Or, some other level of support mechanism is going to have to come in. The IT world has a lot of instances, there's still a bunch of Novell networks out there, right? So there are just people that are never going to make that move. Mm-hmm. And in the instance of something like this, where it's pretty significant, it's just going to depend on who's going to support it, right? And maybe that R3 model with, on-premise or on some private clouds, maybe that's a great solution that's got legs for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Peter, anything else you wanted to ask? I know we're getting near the top of the hour here.
No, I just wanted to thank Irene for jumping on and sharing this, because I thought this was a fascinating story where, when you talk to a lot of IT folks, the story is, oh, the cloud is it. The cloud's the future. Got to go there. Got to do anything possibly, that we can. And, there's a tremendous amount of pressure to, follow the leader there and to be able to take that step back and, take a look at, where the company is and, in relation to what those costs are going to be today. To me, a fascinating story. And I just want to thank Irene for jumping on and sharing it with us, because I think what you're going to find is there's going to be a lot of folks out there that are going to be in a similar boat.
Well, you're very, very welcome, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Irene. It's been great hearing your story. Thanks for sharing it. This has been another episode of the MSDW Podcast. My thanks to Peter Joeckel of Turn On Dynamics for co-hosting with me this time. If you have any other feedback or any other ideas for this AX2 365 series that you want us to cover in a future episode, please do be in touch with me, jgumpert at msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.